Who are those who change history? Are they the ones with the most fame and notoriety? Not in America. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, the obscure can change the world. In America, the invisible are often the heroes. The year was 1781. General Cornwallis and his officers spread their maps wide, briskly discussed their war plans, spilled the innermost secrets of the British Army, and never paid heed to the man who was waiting on them. He was, after all, a runaway slave. Surely, they thought, he couldn't be literate, much less understand what they were discussing. But little did they realize that this man, James, had trained for the job. Earlier that year, James had done the unusual. He requested permission from his master, William Armstead, to leave and join the war effort, fighting alongside the young Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette saw something in James that many people hadn't. He recognized his dedication and wit, and thus proposed an idea. James could travel to the nearby British camp and pose as a runaway slave who was looking for work. From there, he could engage in espionage and send any information he collected back to Lafayette and the Americans. The plan held a tremendous risk, yet the potential for tremendous rewards. If he were caught, he would be hung. But James accepted those risks and dove into the mission. Because of his diligence as an orderly, James was given a role like none other. The British command requested his services as a spy against the colonies. With this power, James accepted yet another layer of risks. He constantly funneled information back to Lafayette and the other American commanders, all the while feeding false information to the new British leaders in his camp. Because of his work, James had an enormous impact on the war effort. See, by 1781, George Washington understood that he could bring the war to an end if only he knew how to most effectively maneuver his troops. Thus, he wrote to Lafayette and requested information regarding the British Army. He received a report that was crafted by James. This report laid the basis for the plan to cut off reinforcements from Yorktown and solidify the Americans' victorious position in the final battle of the war. It was because of James's paramount role within the Yorktown struggle that Time magazine later called him the most important Revolutionary War spy. Years passed, and James finally received his freedom. He began a family, even a farm, and legally changed his name to James Lafayette in honor of his friend. And we won't often find the name of James Lafayette in history books. Yet his obscurity doesn't change the impact he left. The year 1824 rolled around, and the Americans received a welcomed surprise. Shouts filled the streets, and crowds gathered as Lafayette was welcomed home to the Americas for the first time. Every eye was focused on the famous Frenchman, yet no one cared to notice the smiling elderly man amongst the crowd. Suddenly, the carriage was called to a stop, and Lafayette rushed out to this silent bystander and embraced him. James might not have been known by those around him. He may have seemed invisible, yet to the one who recognized what he had done, no one was more worthy of respect. If it weren't for James's efforts, the war might never have been won. America might never be what it is if it weren't for him, a hidden hero. Today, in our culture, we are told that it is simply the most glamorous who make a difference. Our culture ignores the simple. Yet we must, like Lafayette, recognize the best in others, not seeing past them simply because they're simple. We can't be like the British and ignore the best in others. Let us look for the hidden heroes. The mother who wipes the tears from her child's eyes, quietly teaching him courage. The teacher who stays up late grading papers, struggling to instill a love of history in his students. The nurse, working double shifts to care for her children and those in need. These are the hidden heroes of today. Let us remember that our history is shaped through the dedicated actions of the hidden heroes like James Lafayette. So let us look to those around us and see the best in others, because we know that even the most obscure can change the world.